Taiwan proposes a record leap in defense spending as China announces a fresh set of military drills in the region.
I'm John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus. I'm here at Taipei Main Station. Taiwan's latest high-speed rail project is one step closer to becoming a reality. We take a look at how it's going to knit a tourist hotspot closer to Taiwan's capital.
Japan reverses course on nuclear power as a global energy crunch bites. Plus,
I'm Louise Watt at an exhibition in Taipei where Hong Kongers are expressing their identities as the space for them to do so at home shrinks.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan has unveiled a proposed defense budget increase of 13.9%. That's an extra $2.1 billion from the year before. That includes a special budget of $3.5 billion in spending for advanced weapons systems and fighter jets like the F-16V. If the legislature approves the package, it would be the 6th year in a row that the country has boosted defense spending. Tensions with China have increased since the high-profile visit from U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier this month. Beijing, which claims Taiwan as its own, carried out its largest ever military exercises around the country in response to the visit. For more on what Taiwan's military might do with a larger defense budget, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Oh Sifu, a defense expert in Taipei.
We knew before that Taiwan was looking to increase its military budget by at least 4%. With that increase, what systems should Taiwan be looking to buy?
Yes, this year Taiwan's defense budget is around 12.2 billion US dollars. The budget is focused on the so-called anti-ship missile and air defense missile. And this is our first priority to fend up the Chinese threat. And because Chinese Navy has over 300 warships, so we need a huge amount of anti-ship missile to defend ourselves. And you can see that Chinese missile test a few days ago. So air defense missile is also very important for us. And this is the major focus on our next year defense budget that increase about 4%. And this year will be about $1.5 billion US dollars.
There is a section of the proposed defense budget that is called the Sea-Air Combat Power Improvement Plan. And this is a special budget to buy things that are more advanced, like an F-16V fighter jet. How important is that for Taiwan?
Yes. At this moment, that Taiwan adopts the so-called porcupine strategy. That means we need the so-called asymmetric weapon, for instance, the anti-ship missile and air defense missile. And, this is our focus. And this kind of weapon is very useful. It has shown in the Ukrainian war. However, in last week, Chinese military exercise, they use missile, they send their fighter jet and warship across the median line in the Taiwan Strait. So we also need the so-called conventional weapon.
So this is a video from what was confirmed by Taiwan's Ministry of Defense as footage from a Chinese civilian-operated drone looking at 2 Taiwanese soldiers in Jinmen. Seeing how close this drone got to the soldiers, do you think we'll see Taiwan invest more in anti-air and anti-drone systems?
Your video show is in Jinmen, but they are also in Mazu and Dongyin. This kind of drone is usually a small drone that they don't have any weapons. They don't have threat to our ground soldier. So we are, that our Ministry of National Defense has said that we had an anti-drone system next year to defend against this kind of drone threat. So this is a small drone. Basically, they are ISR missions. So the threat, the degree, the extent of threat is not so high. So we just, keep alert and watch what they did. I think that is our best defense.
China is launching a new set of military exercises, this time in its territorial waters close to Taiwan. Taiwan, meanwhile, is continuing drills of its own, and the president has once again sent a clear message to Beijing that the country is ready to fight for its survival. Bing Wang reports.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen inspects a naval base just northwest of the country's capital. It's home to locally developed anti-ship missiles, a primary line of defense against the threat of a Chinese invasion. As Taiwan's commander-in-chief, the president has kept a close eye on the armed forces in the wake of weeks of Chinese military drills around the island. Her aim, to show the country is undeterred.
侵略台湾或者是试图侵略台湾，将付出很大的代价，更将遭受国际社会强烈的谴责。
China's ramped-up drills around Taiwan comes after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi became the highest-level serving American official to visit Taiwan in 25 years. China has warned against international support for Taiwan, most recently saying it will take forceful measures if a Canadian delegation goes through with a planned visit to Taiwan. But the country is determined to thwart China's aggressive rhetoric.
因为随着中共这种远程打击能力的数量跟准确度都增加，那这种固定式的阵地要战力保存的话，其实困难性越来越高。所以其实国防部下一个阶段的重点就是要把我们这个陆地上的暗制反舰飞弹全部加以机动化。
Taiwan's military has deployed missiles and simulated live-fire drills on the islands of Penghu, right in the middle of the Taiwan Strait. With Beijing unlikely to change its aggressive posture towards Taiwan anytime soon, officials here are aware that it falls on the country's military to make sure it is prepared for any situation. James Rayner and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's high-speed rail line is set to get a 60-kilometre extension. The plan is to link Yilan County with Taipei, speeding up travel on the popular route and alleviating congestion. John Van Trieste has this report.
This family is heading to Yilan, a northeastern county that's a favorite getaway for Taipei residents.
We're going to go in the cool hot springs, not the hot ones. The cold. Yeah.
They've picked a weekday to set off.
In the weekend, it's very, very difficult, but weekday is easy to get the tickets.
While there are bus routes, and they could always drive, traffic jams can make it an unappealing journey.
It's terrible. In the weekend, almost you need to spend 5 hours from the Yilan back to Taipei.
Rail is one of the best ways to get around Taiwan. But if you're traveling to the scenic East Coast, rail travel can be a bit frustrating. Tickets there often sell out well in advance. A new high-speed rail project is going to help matters, though, making travel to the region faster and easier. An extension of Taiwan's high-speed rail line to Yilan is in the works. Right now, the fastest trains from Taipei's main station take around an hour. The new line would cover the 60-kilometer route in about half that time. The plan has passed the first round of an environmental impact assessment. The mother in this family prefers conventional trains because they have more stops to choose from along the way. The younger generation, though, is more excited.
It's like a bullet train, like the Japanese bullet train. Yeah, I like going on bullet trains. They're fast.
He'll be a lot more grown up by the time the line opens, though. The plan now faces a more rigorous second round of environmental inspections, and the tracks will pass through 23 ecologically sensitive areas. Construction isn't expected to start for another 3 years, but according to current plans, by 2030, Yilan, and by extension the rest of the East Coast, will be that much closer to the capital. Kama Xu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan Railway Labour Union is calling off strikes planned for several upcoming major travel days. The union says they made the decision after some progress in negotiations with management. The biggest concessions were a pay raise for over 1,300 of the union's lowest paid workers and an allowance for train operators and safety employees. The union had previously said they would not work on the day of nationwide elections in November and would not work overtime on public holidays in September and October. The union and the Taiwan Railways Administration have been at loggerheads over salaries and benefits as the government agency transitions to a state-owned company. COVID-19 infections are on the rise again in Taiwan, with almost 27,000 new cases reported on Thursday.
的确是这一周的这个开始很明确的在向上哈。那根据我们内部的这个模型来推估的话，这一波的疫情，我们认为它的高峰，也就是它的高点会在9月的中下旬。
The Central Epidemic Command Center says the new wave is due to the more infectious BA.5 variant of the virus. People are also being reinfected with COVID, with 5,000 such cases recorded so far. Taiwan has ordered next-generation Moderna vaccines to combat BA.5, and those should arrive in October at the earliest. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has announced the country will restart nuclear power plants and develop next-generation nuclear reactors. The decision marks a reversal of a decade-old policy aimed at weaning Japan off nuclear power following the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. James Chater reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in a landmark decision for the country's energy policy.
原子力発電所については再稼働済み10基の稼働確保に加え設置許可済みの原発再稼働に向け国が前面に立ってあらゆる対応を取ってまいります。
Kishida's announcement marks a major reversal of Japan's energy strategy. A decade after the devastating 2011 Fukushima disaster led to the idling of most of the country's nuclear power plants. But with a recent heat wave almost causing blackouts in Tokyo and Russia's invasion of Ukraine leading to soaring energy costs, Kishida said the global energy situation had drastically changed.
国民理解をさらに深めるための関係者の尽力の在り方などあらゆる方策について年末に具体的な結論を出せるよう与党や専門家の意見も踏まえ検討を加速してください。
A recent poll by the International Energy Agency said the Japanese public's support for restarting nuclear power plants stood at 60%. Japan's return to nuclear power will be watched closely in Taiwan, where nuclear energy is being phased out. Taiwan currently has 3 operable nuclear power reactors, having already shut down 1 nuclear power plant earlier this year. Nuclear power is a contentious issue in Taiwan. Last month, a protest took place in Taipei against Tokyo's plan to dump over 1 million tons of nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean.
也要借鉴这个机会来呼吁日本政府审慎地评估明年要排放核废水的计划。
Concerns over an impending energy crisis are brewing globally, and that precarious environment means some countries may be forced to revisit energy policies thought confined to the past. Damon Lin and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Never Forget Your Name. That's the title of a new exhibition in Taipei, showcasing the work of Hong Kong artists. They have left Hong Kong and say they're trying to use art to hold on to their identity as the city changes and the space for freedom of expression shrinks. Louise Watt reports.
A Hong Kong flag being swept up by China. Hong Kong students being brainwashed with communist ideology. And a blank space where a piece of art should be. These are works by an artist who's left Hong Kong for Taiwan, but his former home and its troubles are never far from his mind. And this is the artist, in disguise. He calls himself V.A. Wong Sir, and left Hong Kong in May.
I after going into the jail to lost my freedom. lost my freedom to draw or to speak what I want to say.
He says he still fears for his safety and so hides his identity in Taiwan too. He's going to start a master's in art here in September. V.A. Wongsa began drawing political cartoons in 2019 as pro-democracy protests rocked Hong Kong. But he lost his job as a teacher after a complaint that his cartoons were inappropriate.
Education policy is brainwashing of the student, and after they learned from their school, they will become a pro-government student in Hong Kong.
In 2020, Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on Hong Kong that makes it easier to crack down on dissent.
Thousands of Hong Kongers have since left their city, among them the artists whose works are seen here. They feel there's a shrinking space for freedom of expression in Hong Kong, and they also fear being arrested for their work.
Another artist whose work is on display at this Taipei exhibition is Sei Fei, or Fly. He was also a teacher in Hong Kong, but left while being investigated for a painting of a protest. He says it wasn't easy to leave friends and family.
We want to use this exhibition to talk about Hong Kong things, to let Hong Kong people have a chance to talk to each other, to let Taiwanese to come here to understand Hong Kong, and also most importantly for us to use art as a medium to remember our identity as Hong Kongers.
Fly uses a tool to write Cantonese characters, but instead of typing the Cantonese sounds, he types insults in English. And then random Chinese characters appear, and he turns those into a poem. Fly says these are the thoughts of Cantonese speakers caught in a brutal environment. The message is something that visitors to the exhibition can appreciate.
In that display, we can feel how he misses Hong Kong, how he struggled, how the struggle inside him. So I'm so touched by his art works.
After feeling silenced in Hong Kong, these artists are bringing their experiences to a wider audience and finding their voice in a place they're learning to call home. Chris Ma and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
The exhibition Never Forget Your Name runs until October 23rd at Ho Sung House in Taipei. Thailand's Constitutional Court has suspended the Prime Minister from office while it rules on whether he violated the country's term limits. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-ocha must step back from official duties while the court considers a case brought by Thailand's opposition parties. They argue that Prayut, who seized power in a military coup in 2014, has breached the 8-year term limit ascribed by the nation's constitution. Prayut's supporters say the clock started when he won the first post-coup election in 2019. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister will take over as acting Prime Minister pending the court's decision. It's been 5 years since the military in Myanmar launched a brutal crackdown of its minority Rohingya population. Human rights groups say that nearly 1 million Rohingya unable to return home are still living in peril. Many sought refuge in neighbouring Bangladesh, where they continue to live in squalid, overcrowded camps with no access to work or education and no chance of citizenship. The United Nations says Myanmar's military campaign was carried out with genocidal intent and that the population of stateless refugees still rely fully on humanitarian assistance for survival.
Ara kembo mader refugee boni tai tanosad ara ehon Burma ma jaite hoyse jaile ara re janor malor hebajotor ara re guarantee dia boribo.
Ong Jo Mo is a Rohingya activist and advisor to Myanmar's National Unity Government, a shadow administration formed by lawmakers ousted by the ruling military junta after a coup in February last year. He spoke to TaiwanPlus reporter Rick Lowert.
So could you tell me what the situation for Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and outside of Myanmar is like 5 years after the 2017 crackdown by the Myanmar military?
Situations remain very same as the one from 2017, where the water was much more safer than the land that they used to live, which meant that people were jumping to cross the Nav River to survive, to escape from atrocities, crimes, genocide carried out by the Burmese military. And nothing has so far improved inside Myanmar. And since the coup, of course, there are additional restrictions being imposed by the junta, and as well as the continued arrest on the freedom of movement was escalated.
Do you think the international community missed warning signs in 2017 and before in the way that the Myanmar military treated its minority Rohingya population? And could it have prevented the violence that we're now seeing from the Myanmar military after the coup last year?
What happened to Rohingya has been systematic, it's intentional, it's pre-planned, and it happened under the witness of international community. International community had the capacity to prevent it and have the capacity to prevent it yet. But international community rather issued statement of concern and showing the sympathy rather than taking concrete actions to save lives. And Rohingya genocide was true for Rohingya 5 years ago. It's true today, it's genocide today, and it is going to be genocide tomorrow, the day after, and in the future as well.
As someone working together with Myanmar's civilian rulers, with its national unity government, with its leaders in exile, what do you think needs to be done to bring peace and accountability for both the Rohingya and for other people in Myanmar that have been experiencing violence from the military there?
Act upon what we preach for. If we're asking for democracy, equality, and justice, we need to ensure everyone in the country is getting that justice, that peace, and that very thing we are looking for and we are preaching for. And I think National United Government has been making effort to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable. Of course, the gravity of crimes committed against Rohingya people are in depth, intensity is very high, and Rohingya people, as someone who come from the community, we paid the highest price among others when it's come with Burmese military. Therefore, I think leading the government of the country, the National United Government, should ensure that Rohingya are getting what they deserve, particularly the justice and equal rights, similar to other ethnic groups in Myanmar.
Bangladesh is shortening work hours and closing schools for an additional day to reduce electricity usage. The country is struggling to cope with rising fuel prices caused by the war in Ukraine. It continues to take steps to preserve its declining foreign currency reserves. Last month, it raised fuel prices by 50%. In its latest efforts, government offices and banks will cut their opening hours from 8 to 7, and most schools will be closed on Fridays. Taiwanese dance troupe Bula Riang has just wrapped up a series of performances of rustling whirring, a piece inspired by the movements of traditional indigenous weaving. Philip Brassard reports.
Dancers stomp and sway in time to songs of the Dayan, one of Taiwan's indigenous groups. This latest work from renowned dance troupe Bularayang mimics traditional Dayan weaving. It's called rustling whirring in English, but Jili Dulu in Mandarin.
织布机的声音，众生词嘛，然后我们翻成中文之后，其实也蛮好的。就好像不管是文化，或每一个人在人的生命过程当中，靠自己嘛，然后度过很多辛苦等等。
The 7-year-old dance troupe, helmed by acclaimed choreographer Bularayang Pagalafa, aims to bring Dayan history and culture to new audiences. In Jili Dulu, images of the mountains that are home to the indigenous group are projected onto the dancers. giving visibility to a group who, like many of Taiwan's 600,000 indigenous people, were mistreated for decades.
它就比较没有舞台的东西，我把它舞台化，所以在呼吸上，在每个段落用声音表情去夸大一点。
With performances in both the north and south of Taiwan, Bularayang dancers are bringing new visibility to a once marginalized way of life. James Rayner, Rick Glauert, and Philip Broussard for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has beat Mexico 5-1 to advance to the next round of this year's Little League World Series, being held in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania.
On a line into left field, that's a base hit, and it'll score a run. Chinese Taipei strikes.
Taipei City's Fulin Elementary is representing the Asia-Pacific region in the tournament and will vie for the International Bracket Championship on Saturday. If they win, they'll play the US Bracket Champs for the overall World Series title. This is the first time Taiwan has made it into the tournament in 7 years. The country has won the title 17 times before, the most out of any country. Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, we leave you with images of a large gathering of wheelchair users in Mexico City calling on the government to make roads and sidewalks more accessible. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.